단지 알아. 네. 지금 뭐 치는데 양원 치료 배송 양원 뒤집어들라 뭐 해봐. 마음에 안 드네. 달람 루지다. 마음에 다 좋아. 다 좀 쉬어줘. 무슨 보이던 데는 골래라서더라. 뭐 아이야. 올라서 다 되네. 다 단지 차기 시간으로 차는데 간선데 추 년배 근홍당 근주기 전바데 쉬야데스 제스도 인도산에 다지당 상만 주로 니와 전장 인도산에 근홍도 근주 상만 챙기러와 어떤데 인도 드네 다 chanchuncho도 드네 도제바 어떤데 지금 돈에 드네 sembar 나와라 쇼.
So Khenchen Rinpoche says that in kind of his feeling nervous, he forgot to talk about the motivation that we should generate, at the outset of receiving teachings. But we are all advanced Dharma practitioners, and so you already know. But in any case, we at the outset of receiving the teachings, we should all begin by generating the mind of bodhicitta.
드네 가인스나 땅간조 드네 남바 산제백 주 송도산에 조우 드네 제다 삼로 인주와 땅네 삼로그 토네 드네 뇽와 여바지 철와 여바지 조야데 다 남바 산제백 주기 조우로와 대인도 드네 로번 아리안데와게 가르송바레스나 마마테네 자갈라 로번 아리안데와 페베갑라 다 자가 나로라 드네 출루 개 체슈게 드네 출루 숨 갑테도 여바레 아리안데베 갑라 지카르스나 낭바레 드네 니바데 단다 지루바레 아주 둘로 마고네 롱킹게 출루 지루바 숨바데 잠세게 출루 드네 로번 아리안데베 텐데게 출루 숨게 체버데 가르송바레 세인도 자네 드네 지루베기 출루되기 류기 죄람 조고조요레스 류인드라 조고조요레스 류인드야 류만드 정체야 대조고조요레스 대인도 류기 죄바 조고르 제베 출루지레스 드네 대나신도 다단데 잠센라제이남 드네 덴바 조고레스 나긴 덴반도야 대조고레스 텐두 나게 줘봐 조르치그레스 산지 좀 된데게 최대 이익이 되네 냠래 조조요레스 텐두 다 저랑조 산노 땅 송바레 르기 줘봐텔라 잡잡치야 텔레 하기도에 나게 줘봐라 잡잡치야 레 하기도에 이익이 줘봐라 잡잡치야 가르레 하기도스 직다당스 디토네 드는 거네 최대 가르 sab기 위험이 되는 하고레스 그래 송도와 어떤지 송바래
So in practicing the Dharma, the main thing is that through our practice we should experience, have a feeling or experience, a transformation that is really on the level of feeling. And so during the time of Lobon Aryadeva in India, there were three main religions or spiritual traditions that were practiced at the time. There was Buddhism, there were the ascetic traditions of the Jains, and the Vedic traditions or Brahmic traditions. And so of these three different traditions, the way that Aryadeva distinguished between them is he said that mainly in the Jain tradition, they mainly practice the path of conduct through the body. So mainly it's in taming the body that is the method or the way of practice. And then in the Vedic traditions, it is mainly through speech, through a lot of recitations, and mainly through kind of taming the speech. And then in the Dharma of the Buddha, it is first and foremost is the mind. So mainly we practice at the level of the mind and taming the mind. And so Aryadeva said, so you should think about it. What is easiest? Is it easiest to practice with the body, taming the body? Is it easiest to tame or practice through speech? Or is it easiest to tame the mind? And so if you think about it, if you contemplate in this way, then there is an understanding that will arise with regard to, which is the more profound dharma or the more profound method of practice.
Tende somba indu zane, tene nganzo tachi lunga yi sumgu tone chu kanreji cheba inayang, chu degi ngundun rowa te, tene yi samlo te imbare, tende indu, ten taleng nganzo ndana tachi Gong Chig tola, tene ta rolling rosenanda, yana nge chi tan dene re sana kochi ngarangi, tachi kusur te she yundu zane, tene che nambe kiyang, 다 공지의 텐데지 렌도 삼성도 지금도 내려 파주 다 트와틀렌 세고나 다 내려지기 돈에 만로 용을 깝라 되는 간주 내려 제고야 그 점센도데 어다 지 공지의 배 메시지 사례 현고사례서야 텐데 잠마인 바 되는 야 공지의 ngaranson 드홍기 배 메시지를 텐데 인상 간주 셰고래 삼바짱야 마인바 공지의 낭추기 베트나는 개체슈지레 텐데 인상 안조 시행고레 삼바 대자마인바
가린 낭추
낭추기 나나 답에 힘부 땜바지레 빼자 첨보지레 텐데 인상 안조 시행고레 삼바 텐데 마인바로와 공진데 테네 둥해 mendoen 켄다 대원 둥켄지 이나 테네 텐도 둥해 mendo바 대당 대원 되베기 무유르데 Drupon tene ji tablam manurwa tenjabegi tene pechachi yimba o tendegi samlo ge thone tene ngazo gongchi ge shongdela thusam gomsum tende ji nawa yina tene chumde ja chewa pendo ja chewa o tende ji yungge yusare o teindu tende ji thone tene naronas.
And so we are practicing mainly also through all the doors or taming all doors of body, speech, and mind. And so here, and so this also prior to beginning with the teachings, we also kind of turn our mind toward that objective, and this, whether he says he can call it maybe like a we're having like a meeting about the Gong Chig, or whether sort of Khenchen Rinpoche is kind of giving some instruction or some explanation that then can maybe spur a little bit of dialogue, conversation, like question and answer. And the reason for teaching the Gong Chig is not just because the Gong Chig is really so special and it's necessary to understand that. It's also not because the Drupon Kagyu is so special, and for that to be understood. It's also not to understand that it's the most profound kind of essence of the Buddha Dharma, but it's really that what is contained in the Gong Chig is applicable to those who wish to overcome suffering and who wish to have happiness. And so with that objective, the method, the unmistaken method of practice, everything that is needed to fulfill that objective is there very clearly, in the Gong Chig. And so by understanding this profound text, by applying it to study, contemplation, and meditation, then he believes that there could be some real benefit.
Tende indu pena chidang namchoy ngarang so tachi nangbegi jinju tsugi tenpa sayindu sanje shaja tupalang nganze nangi yorwa ngune chena sanje ge songbegi chu tela tene rawa yo marwa rawa nganzo kangban rawa chena rawa zogruwa bonchi zogruwa tena she sanje ge chu la tende ge rawa yo mare yena ngarang so jinju ge tene sanje ge chu la rawa chi zo jagirte ndingan zo nangbegi lures konzo chiru motebi lures neta samji jenru urwa ngone ge sanje ge chu tela rawa mere sanje ge chu de simchen tamche ge chedu song je wa re ma do be nganzo sanje ge loma yin senken jibu chedu song je wa mare de ndu chane sanje ge chu la rawa yo mare den an shen do tene Gong Chig gi jong de la rawa yo mare rong jibu ge yang mare ga ju jibu ge yang mare nangpa jikbu kaya maare ndo na tanji shuwa nanshin tane penpa tan dewan dunken tamchege tane chi la len taryaage ta chi chuyo chi cha dewa indu zane tane simchen tamchege ta chuyon zhogu chi cha yungu yores.
And so also when it comes to the Buddha's teachings, there is no boundary, really. So whatever boundaries that are placed are kind of fabricated boundaries that are not actually, meant to be kind of there when it comes to the Buddha's teaching. So, for instance, like, these are Buddhists and these are non-Buddhists, and the Buddhist teachings are for the Buddhists. So it's not like that. And in this, the Buddhist teachings are really without a boundary in that they are meant for all sentient beings. They are accessible to all sentient beings. Whoever can be benefited is to be benefited by the Buddha's teachings. And the Gong Chig is like this too. There isn't any, it isn't that the Gong Chig belongs to the Drupon Kagyu, or that it belongs to the the Kagyu lineages, or that it belongs to Buddhism. As at all, it is that it, in the same way, it's accessible and applicable to anyone that can be benefited by it. It is meant to be practiced in that way, without boundary.
Tendere ti indu zane tatamchu gongpa chigwe ki yung tende chi nganzo tanda dana shuya tende chigre tat indu ti chungrim shebe kapte yinba 단지 흥은라 다 쟁해기 신지 나와 티고랑 좀 돌두지 쉬sem바레 다 되네 저번제된 송군 공반 양엘인데 철외기 제라 되네 쟁아 실험 중에 좀 댄사랑라 시라가 투수 연ung 부 유요 말에 되네 공다 가사 칼페난 게 요래 표기 사자 근데 전에 표현도 전에 되네 공 지단 개바 첨부레 줍도 첨부레 디지도 전에 되네 양지 공급된라 추 슝켄다 저와틀렌 난켄데 망보고지 공급된라 용기도와 근데 용도 전에 레 당보바 추 서버 슝켄데 양 망보 용기요레 되나 현도 추기 돌은 개바 연켄 양 망보 용기요레 되는 개바 연켄 텐소 용도 전에 가르쳐와 되요레서나 되는 중공 조백이 추 믹스했는데 시그레 생각조 권용유스 대인들단 드공 조발람 투묵 마인백이 체주 그 송던데 간데간데 요레스 제가 실험 중에라 개바던데 그 저버트 용도와
the Jimala Gari the name mixer the Jima the Gari
되네 공라다 개바던도 그 저버트 용고 요레 제된 송공 그추 믹스했는데 송그레 생각조 고송스 간데 송그레스 콩라 믹스에 추 가려요레스 다 된데 쟤는 개바던 속에 근데 제가 실험 중에라 저버트 용거 요래
And so Khenchen Rinpoche already began with some description about the background of the Gong Chig, how Chinga Sherab Jungne wrote it originally sort of as an outline of Lord Jigten Sumgön's general, kind of pith points in his teachings. And then after Lord Jigten Sumgön passed into parinirvana, Chinga Sherab Jungne didn't remain for very long at the seat, of Drikung. He traveled around. He wandered and traveled around, and in his wanderings, he was extremely learned. He was also a realized practitioner, and there were many who came to request teachings and Dharma guidance from him. And many who were just beginners, who were new to the Dharma, and also many who were very learned, who were scholars or had a lot of learning or training already under their belt. And so they would often ask Chinga Sherab Jungne, what is it that we've heard that Drikung Kyopa, Lord Jigten Sumgön, taught a kind of exceptionally special or different Dharma, that there is something kind of a particular or special or different about the way that he taught. So can you share with us or tell us, what that is?
다 텐테기 갑라 테네 칭가 시람 존에기 가리 공고 요르스나 다 단단다고 지나스 다 칭가 공레 유도 요르와 데 인두자네 나랑 유두자네 다지 조베기 투문 마임베 체주된 존 덴덴덴데레스는 제시 잡 투근도스 이내야 마음베기 갑라 다 계시 조베기 투문 마임베 체주된 존 얘기 돌어줄 마디바이나 tani chechu tenzo nyam rogundu o tante indu ta yitolo chik chegundu gong chene tani jenghe ta yini tanji sindri tenzo tsangma tsu ka ngo ne ta ngoma kongla sindri mangbo yorwa tenzo tsangma tsu chik digne tani ta gong chik senanda chechu sayage tani pecha chik tani tsu kadu nayage tani samlo tante chik korwa res.
And so, based on Chinga Sherab Jungne's experiences with this, he had the thought that, now, he can explain, he can share with people, what it was that was so extraordinary or uncommon about Kyopa Jigten Sumgön's teachings. But if he doesn't really commit this to writing kind of in an organized way, it's possible that then that these teachings will disappear or become lost. And so it was with that intention in mind that then he took the collected writings or kind of the outlines that he had already written down, and he refined them and sort of organized and refined them into first, what became then the basis, for the Gong Chig.
Ta tende na yondu zane ta tanda lorju tenso nangla jenga shiram jone ge Gong Chig thangbu digdu zane peche ka mandawa nga dig nangdawa Gong Chig dig yondu Gong Chig ka mandawa nga dig nangre thangbo tan thama nga ba de ge kapsu ten tanda ngarang chogen je yobe ta Gong Chig ge yung de chongare de indu tadande 춘돔기 조베기 체주 세고나인다 tane 산제기 송게 된다 삼노탄당 고와 만다와 다 페지 니자 잠시다 여대기로 출 타마텔라 돌송 니자 텐데지 총아래 디유윤도 전에 텐데기 돌송 니자 되게 나네 tene 돌송 자당 앞주 잠지 체주기 용세야지 딩나와로 돌송 자당 앞주대 체주기 용세야지 tene langma peche 돌송 다 십주 셔랑지라 렌탑 세야지 딩나와래 대인도 전에 렌탑 tendu Gong Chig gi jung dang len tabu se ni cha yung yo re so cha sa
So jibju.
jibju shedu shibden ji yo re
And so first, there were also kind of 5 different versions of kind of these original, the original kind of collected Vajra statements, and then and kind of what became, like really that these statements which embodied what was kind of the most kind of exceptional or unique to Lord Jigten Sumgön's teachings or instructions. Then he kind of categorized them into, there was the like 200
tan Jigten Sumgön gi sung shabe gi chu gi tunda zo tangkan nibja masin zam ji yor da shiram june sindi nang la 다디 닙자 마신 잠데 드네 시람 중에 주 체주기 용도 주 리윤도 자네 자당 압주데 공지기 용세야 테저레 다 황마된 졸라 렌타버스네 저나와레
So there were the 200 Vajra statements that kind of were overall kind of these that embodied the collected kind of the real essence of the Buddha of Lord Jigten Sumgön's teachings, in these 200 verses. And then of those 200, there were 150 Vajra statements that then became the Gong Chig. And then there were an additional 40 or so, 46, 47, which became kind of like the kind of addition to, or the additional statements. And so these kind of loosely together comprise, what kind of makes up the Gong Chig or the single intent.
Dorje son jada ngapchu teyang ta nanglo la desen dun kaga cheware desen dun kain sana jeda jedang ge sanje ge chuge gor desen chik tena ya sanje ge chuge joja te tender yindu zane ya tender den rewe desen chik tena sanje ge chuge nyamlen de domba sum yindu zane domsum den rewe ge desen sum tani tenregi sanjigi chude domba sumji gone nyamsul len yondu zane tawa nambar thabaji gugu yore choba nambar thabaji gugu yore gomba nambar thabaji gugu yoba yindu zane tani yang chi tagum chusum ge korge desen chik tani tin rawu chu nyamsul lang tagum chusum yang thabaji cha yondu zane ndewu kar togre sedu zane ndewu sanjigi kompang togu yoba yin zang tene dewu 그렇게 대생직 오던데 전에 tene Gong Chig gi jungde ta desen dung tone ma tene sarshi na ma tene ji redures
So the 150 Vajra statements, which are really like the main section, or that really is what is considered to be the Gong Chig, is comprised of 7 sections. So the first section is, first with regard to, a general statements regarding the Buddha's teachings. So the vital points of the Dharma wheels, for instance. So what was actually taught by the Buddha. And then second is then mainly dealing with dependent origination. And then third, since this then is kind of embodied within the practice of the 3 different levels of vows, then you have the next 3 sections are of each of the different levels of vows, the 3 levels of vows. And then since the vows have to be then put into practice, and then based on that, one, through really practicing, then one realizes the completely perfect view. So really then that has to do with view, meditation, and conduct, which is the 6th. And then the 7th, once one engages in the practice of view, meditation, and conduct, the fruition of this then is Buddhahood. And so the 7th chapter or category is dealing with the fruition.
Ta tende indu tende gi ta Gong Chig gi jong de la de chen dun yebare tendu ta de chen dun de la mixe gi korem ngi pa me song bare tangbo kare ne go zu na ya pechen rewa song yore yin na yang rowa go tangbo kane zu na ya re song yore jenga shiram ju ne yin na ya domsum de pa zu korem ma tu song bare domba sum gi kor chi yorwa tangbo sordom shies tene niba chandum tene sumba sangas te sumde korem yama tu chog mara e songre te mayin pegi tene tadante ta Gong Chig gi chom tenzo paso korem kande chene sheba yina ya tene dik deba tene chi redo yore.
And so actually Chinga Sherab Jumne said that there isn't necessarily a kind of step-by-step progression that has to be followed when, for instance, reading the Gong Chig, that it isn't bound to progressive order, that wherever you start is fine to start. You can start anywhere, and it is applicable. However, the one section or the 3 sections that shouldn't be approached in this way, or that do have progressive order, are the sections dealing with the 3 levels of vows. So that should be approached in progressive order. So first, the vows of individual liberation or pratimoksha, the bodhisattva vows, and then secret mantra. But that apart from that, there, wherever it is that one begins is applicable.
Te indu ta tanda nganzo Gong Chig gi tsawa namjo nganzo ta inchi dan ta jayi da tanzo kana jurjebe tsawa chi yorwa tende ti tsawe nangi korem tela tangbo chungur ki chomde tangbo la ja nang yorwa peche tende re te indu ta tere nganzo dana trisa la tsangma la pecha yona mena kande ina.
No, people. So he was just asking if, because we do have the root verses translated into English and Chinese, and he was wondering if you had a copy of the root verses, but Anila is saying no.
Okay. Ya ta te indu ke chebar mandurwa ta indu ta che namba namjun thona chena Gong Chig gi tene tsawa ta inchi dan jayi thola jurjawa tensola tene tangbo chungkuru ke chom tende dig nang yore teyan dig yore te indu di gola tene chenga shiram jone ke khare songbare sana nang chui la tene ji sarba thusam chengken dang sardu shungken gi tene ji loma tende yina tene tangbo chungkuru ke chomne ngojo chene ya ti go re songre tangbo chungkuru ke chomde ti tene ti je la tenjer ke chomde ti ro kasana chungkuru ki joja de tenre tenda inza tenre ki korde ti tene nyamlen cheya de domba sumre domsum de ti tene jula cheya de tawa gomba joba sumre te ti tagum joba tene devu tenen rigres te chidu sane tambo chungkuru chomnen gozu na rigres son yore te indu tan namju nga zo Gong Chig ge tsawa tenzo changma de korem tenan shin chene ja yore.
And so, in any case, if you have access to the root verses, which have been translated into both English and Chinese, then the first chapter begins with the vital points of the Dharma wheels. And so even though Chinga Sherab Jungne taught that there isn't necessarily that the text is not bound to progressive order, that beginning anywhere is okay. He did say that when it comes to somebody who is newly entering the Dharma, somebody who is new to the Dharma, beginning with a study, contemplation, and meditation, that the first point of kind of introduction for them should be the turnings of the wheel of Dharma, or the Dharma wheels, so that is maybe the first, what is most effective to teach at first. And then following that, they should receive teachings on dependent origination. And then following that, to practice, to begin engaging in the practice, they should receive the teachings progressively on the 3 levels of vows. And then following that, in order to give rise to experience in their mind stream, then they should receive the teachings on the view, meditation, and conduct, and then following that on the fruition.
Tene yanji nangchu gi kodo yunken nangbe gi chula shu channe jigda tende yinken yina tene tangbo nyamlen gi rimbala janne tagum jebe chomde tangbo she gure songre dendu zane tene tangbo tagum jebe chomde she tawa gomba jeba tanzo kande yimbe de she tene de she zabe jela tagum jeba nambra tabe tone nyamlen kar che gure sana tene nyamlen te domba de nyamsulen gures tene domsom she gure songre ta domba de nyamsul langba yina tene tendegi nyamsul langja de karre sayindi zane te tenderes tenjen jebon jongwa sayateres domba sumge ge nyamlenge tsawa te tenderes tendu tenderge somde she tene tenderge korde suyu songbaresana tender tönken tene 산제기 추기나라 숨겨 여바 인도 잔에 되니 중거된 거주지 중거의 수 거와래서나 산제기 송바 인상 되는 제우 산제 대시에스 어떤 대전에 고람진의 신앙인들이래서나야 된대야 송여바래
So it's also sometimes taught like an alternative kind of progressive order would be, for those who have newly entered into the practice of Buddha Dharma, is that first they are introduced to the view, meditation, and conduct. And then once they are familiar with that, then to really engage in correct practice, then they should be taught the 3 levels of the vows and enter into the different levels of training or practices of holding or maintaining or training in the vows. And then since that kind of embodies the practice, the essence of the practice, and the nyamling lang dine langja tindal gare
nyamsul langja de domba sum re
dine tindal
dine domba sum gi dine ji ningbon ro de tender.
And then the essence, so that which is to be practiced are the 3 levels of vows, and then the essence of those 3 levels of vows is a dependent origination or interdependence. Or the root or essence of the 3 vows is dependent origination, and the one who taught dependent origination is the Buddha, and the Buddha taught the teachings of the Buddha occurred in the context of the turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So then would be taught then the vital essence of the Dharma wheels, and then following that would be fruition. So this is another kind of order that the Gong Chig can also be taught in for a new beginner.
that dela sobe tene korem ta mandawa kha nga chamje sungre ina ta ngen dena ta chasang shomugo wache teindu tene tereng nganzo shoya de ta peche nganzo yege rang tone ma shumago wan roji chego sarwa kansa changmal pecha mandu tende indu tene ta tereng nganzo talen dana gongji shoya de zo cheshun ro de tangbo tagum jebe chomne ngochu ne shuna sambatande jeans.
And so that's a little bit in terms of like the different orders. And today, since you all don't have the Vajra verses yourself in English, then maybe he won't follow the like according to the text or the Vajra statements, but just kind of give a general teaching or overview, and perhaps beginning with the section of view, meditation, and conduct.
Tene chida da Gong Chig yongge Dorje song changma de tene je nyamsu lenken ge kansa je ge wandu chedu zane pe ke chembo o tene je re tendu dorson de ke chembo mare sene peche yewa mewan rawo ji ro yena ya ji ke chewe nang ge chewan rawo de zowo tene tagum jube chom sayandi tene cha yongwa o tene je rendu tendu zane tene talen 다 다금 주베게 좀디 조wo 전에 되는 쇼야 같은데 지인 간선은 다금 주베 좀데라 배제 들송 니슈 잠지 요래 대인도 다 dorje송 니슈데 되는 지 때에서 14 로지 강시신도 때에서 14 로지 동시에 되는 좀 현다데 tenso대 양간소지 된다 내가 돈에 강시신 로지 셔야 어떻게 로지 딱 나랑 거는 저지 되는 지인스.
And so the entirety of the Gong Chig is really when it, to be practiced and sort of regarded as especially important. All of the Vajra statements are kind of so profound and important, and you can't really say that, this section is more profound than that section, or these statements are more profound than that statements. But that being the case, there is tagum chusum
re tachidang changma ke chemborda yang te nane ke chewe nange chewanro tagum jibe chomde chagi yore.
So they're all really important, but maybe the most important of the important can be said to be really contained within the section of view, meditation, and conduct. And so this is comprised of about 20 Vajra statements. And so Khenchen Rinpoche says he thinks that maybe just focusing on these Vajra statements, he can explain them in greater depth or in more detail. And then as it becomes applicable, he can refer to the other statements and the other sections, as seems appropriate.
Teindu ngazo changma pe shipcha chine shugona tene yachi kege thone jurgo ure tende indu peche ngazo chisena lojing gondro ya nyenka yungres teindu zane tene ngazo nyima ngaru chege nana ta tagum jube chomde kala kansam chin roto wa zogos.
So really, if you were going to teach the entire Gong Chig in very great detail, then it could probably take us about a year to get through it. So he will instead just give us a very concise, abbreviated overview, but explaining what he can with regard to the statements in this one section of the view, meditation, and conduct.
Te indu tandande pena Gong Chig la tanganzonde chisu tane joban jeden songgon tang jenga shiram jone ta khonam be gi hloma tenzo gi nze jebe Gong Chig in rewa yang kha mangbu yebare tenzo pe jebare shipta song yore tane tingsan jeya mandu te ina ngme gabla tanda yore song yore ngar chudeng ba gi Gong Chig in rewa jeba chi yore song yore ta tanda phodu je ma song chi chena ma hong bala yegi yona meshi o tendere ta te in chombe 간다르지 나랑 손종 가주기 드니 주베 난게 라만 케바 탄조고 송제베긴 데와 빼망보레 드니 라버도 단단데 가주 찌토나 산노타와 이남 까마바 군청 제바 tat kongen 데와 제슈지 잠바레 페제 단다 보데 tukdowa pyoene tanda deb zoyore, deb chukre. Teyan deb chungchung mare, deb chenpo. O tende indu tere, tena shen do tene shamal gen zerwa yore, tena shen nyingme ge chonen zerwa yore, tena shen sache ge chonen zerwa yong degere. Tendu zane gongche inde ngone chi nganzo pha ta du zane tsikang jada ngap chu yore de tön de pe ja cheta da ji chu yun du zane dewa pe je shin je ba mang bu de chi ju du yore es.
So these root verses, these Vajra statements, these 150 Vajra statements that come from Lord Jigten Sumgun and were committed to writing by Chinga Sherab Jungne, have been studied, and really all sorts of different extensive commentaries have been written about them. Foremost among these are commentaries from Lord Jigten Sumgun's and Chinga Sherab Jungne's closer disciples. But then also, and among those, there is said to be also one very extensive commentary by Gar Chodingpa, which actually Khenchen Rinpoche says he hasn't seen, but at some point he hopes to come across this or be able to come into contact with it. So there are many commentaries within the Drupon Kagyu lineage, but even outside of the Drupon Kagyu lineage, in fact, the most extensive commentary was written by the 8th Karmapa, and it is comprised of 6 volumes, and in Tibetan, these 6 volumes are not, like there's kind of smaller volumes and larger volumes. These are not smaller volumes, they're really large volumes. So that is one of the the most extensive commentary. There are also commentaries, from the Sharmar, Nyingma, Sakya, and so these 150 Vajra statements have become the source of much, a lot of Dharma, a lot of explanation. Many commentaries, extensive commentaries have arisen as a result of them.
Gelugu chone mixegi gunchigin terwa tende yigi thola yomare te inayam tene tak tanda ro gedembe ge temba tambo zungke je zungkaba shugruwa tene kongi gunchi dang tenhing tende chi ne peche lo je zamla tene kembo nawe ge lorju tende yong de ge yorin ro ge sheda zungne o tende kem Gong Chig lo je something la then je zonga pa ge tine ndong ge sheda zu tegin kembo de je zonga ba nang then Gong Chig da tinhin tiwe ge lorju tende yung ge yore ten du tanda je zonga pe ge sung tende ge nang la ji ten sung gong ge sung ba re sene chig ngu su yo ma re te ina ji ten sung gong ge sung je be tanda mangbo kong ge ti yore ten du zane 간다르 벽이 주주 다 탐지에게 도낭 제사지 개 정보 제사지 어떤데기 용자 정보지 대양 가르서 우리 간선데지 첩시 난신기 내가 제약체도 많이 bar 전에 탈바다 탐지 전배 공방 토비하게 체도 당문에게 되는지 개 정보 차된게 어다 된데기 용지 인데바레스
So also, even in the Gelug tradition, even though there isn't a particular commentary, Je Tsongkhapa, who's the father of the Gelug tradition, he taught the Gong Chig and the Tekchen Timbe Ningbo, or the heart essence of the Mahayana teachings, for 8 years, and even though it wasn't specifically mentioned that these originated from Lord Jigten Sumgun, it was still filled the content of many of his own teachings, and so in this way, there are many who have had really great interest in these Vajra statements, and it has been, the source of inspiration, practice, and study for so many throughout all traditions. And it isn't that it's just a source of, kind of a knowledge to be contemplated or understood intellectually, but really it has all that is needed in terms of actually practicing the Dharma in such a way that it really leads to liberation and a complete awakening or omniscience.
Tati indu tintegi shunga nane tanda tagum jube chom ne ngozo ne shuya indu zane ta tagum jube chom ge nane ta tangshu ke cheshu de karasung go yurusana ngarang zo tane ji chu nyamlen chinkin chu la tuba dan samba gomba chinkin ji ngone tambu ke cheshu de kar go yurusana juba yang taba ji go ya de pe ke chimbures chu cheyala 단디 등산게 투솔 백해 전부 차용 거요. 간사람 지당게 다 지금 잠랭 기낭라 체릭베 야제 차네 내가 간제지네 베 답되고지 차용 거요. 베나 로카시 지금 하나 다지 라마 지금 되네 취지 슈 왕지 슈구요나 라마데 주세게 사자랑 런전에 슈야 마도베 태가르 슈야 데스칼레 카본라지로와 다이나 로징니기 나라페 주르와 쳔보지 테네 달라마 무수 육세게 사자라 레마토바이나야 라메게 송주데 단다단단 간소 쉬야 여바지 차네단 주르와 쳔보지 탭송어와 다데다 테나신 쳔네 간들 주르와 쳔보지 탭연두 테네 간소 단단데 따금 주베 촘게 난기 테네 돌송 당부디 토라 답베 토낭 쳔보지 제구요레 네 토랑 간소 썸노 야보지 당고요레스
And so, so when it comes to the view, meditation, and conduct, what is most important and to begin with in our Dharma practice is to really come into contact with a pure or an authentic lineage. So this is really very important and maybe especially important in these times or these days. So these days, when with all of like the scientific advancements and technology, we're in a place where, for instance, if you think about, how it was before in terms of a teacher-to-student relationship, in order to receive teachings, empowerments, transmission from a spiritual teacher, the student would have to actually seek that teacher out, and it would have to take place in person, a direct person-to-person transmission. But now, actually, in a very short period of time, just in like 1 or 2 years, there's been a huge shift with regard to this. That it's no longer necessary to meet in person. And so especially kind of in with regard to this, the first of the Vajra verses regarding the view, meditation, and conduct are especially important.
테네테나 젠다 등산간조 데 산제게 송베 간줄 덴줄 테나 젠테네 차첸다 조첸게 맹아 다 망보지 고 게이 망보토라 줄용고요로와 데인도 잔에 간조 빼차 땅켄다지나야 빼차데 강에 추니메와 가르따고나야 가르라 소정 제구요나 탐체 단다랑 람산 간조 토야 예베게다 투수텐데지 차데요로와 다 텐데 인도잔에 다 단단디 Gong Chig Tagum Jube Chongnan 그 Dorsong Tangbo 되게 가르송 그랬으나 난소 추 냠len 제도 잔에 라마 주반 찍네 찍도 마 주제베기 다추 텐데지게 토라 테네 냠len 제바이나 테테네 원에기지 제우 양다고서 토야 요바 텐데지레스 텐두 다 주바 요고야 데 백해 정보지레 송거래 다 주바 요고야 센도 잔에 단단가랑 조변하지 다 잡진 가르치는 부지 군도네 송주지 드링도 오지라 슈유나 디 라가나라 예반던소 다지 고단 냠도 렌지도 좀네 슈요레 로와 Garchen 뭐지 구속당 안주 조보니 냠도 상한데는 좀네 슈요로와 다테나신 다제 톨로 여바이나 지다 조보데 디 상한나 요마레테 이나야 무유순제네 태거 송백이 송주텔라 당간주지 쉬야게 고갑던데 지 라비요로와 땡도 무유수 고지 추기 주바 전라고 토네 이나야 주바 무유수 요데바 라마 무유수 용네 송바인도 자네 송치기 토네양 그 주바 무유수 요데바다 텐데지기 토네 간주 쉬야게 고갑지 용기 요래 디인도 다 텐데지 쉬네 냠len 제바이나 디펜토 체기레 송거요로와 대마도 당간주 마옹발라 닌카체쇼 가르차스 와르스나 등산데 따지 벤나 왕롱 티망보지 먼저 유튜브나 레용도와 디인도 로자 녀제기지라 당가 메길라마 땡고야 만두스 송주 상마 유튜브나 요레스네 유튜브 라마 땡야게 төсө지 레메세바 마레 디인도 제단단 레기레 고지 원에 추를 무바지유 추를 대바지유에 돈에 그 유튜브는 추슈고 요래때 이나야 땡문에 주바드 덴베 추지 자기 요담에 세야데 안조 산노 당야지리로와 디나신도 안조 빼차지 오다 당부디 주나
So also, there's such access also in the West to all different texts and teachings. Like much of the Kongyur and Tingyur has been translated into various languages, as well as many, of the pith instructions from many great past masters. And so, there's no difficulty in finding or getting a hold of Dharma texts. But, traditionally, this, when it comes to becoming familiar with these teachings or reading different Dharma texts, this also would happen in the context of a student-teacher relationship. So, for instance, just like we're doing here now, where like there's these 150 Vajra statements, and there, for instance, it would be passed, in the past, like from one lama, from lama to disciple, and so on and so forth. And so in that way, because of the human connection, there is like the transmission of lineage, or one receives the lineage, that lineage is present. And because for it would be one spiritual teacher based on his own practice and realization would be able to kind of pass on this pure transmission to the student, who would also then give rise to direct experience and realization. And so that is what kind of defines lineage, really. So that it seems to be that this person-to-person connection is an important aspect of that. When we think about, for instance, how we had the opportunity this morning to sit in the presence of His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche, and he is actually present, his an embodied form, and our form is present in the same space with him. And, we're there together, and so there's something different about that from when. For instance, we don't actually meet in person, but receive teachings over the internet, or whether it be teachings or empowerment or what have you. So there is, there's real kind of palpable experience of blessing, for instance, in, when it is in this person-to-person context. And so there's more benefit, Khenchen Rinpoche believes, for this kind of transmission or interaction to happen in person. And he thinks that there's a danger, for the future with regard to, how kind of the direction we're going in terms of relying more and more on kind of the virtual stage, or receiving the Dharma through the internet. So, for instance, when there are empowerments and transmissions and teachings on YouTube, maybe 100 or 200 years from now, later on, when the Lama, who has given those transmissions and empowerments is maybe no longer even alive, but the someone can think, oh, I don't need to meet a Lama in person because I can just receive it all, from the internet, or I can just receive it through YouTube. And there is, maybe on the one hand, this is okay, if the disciple, really has true faith and devotion. But on the other hand, he says, he really wonders how and if it's possible for authentic lineage to remain intact, if that's really the direction that we're headed in.
Yante tandandi kowa manarwachi naya de kechambore tandapena jing zamling shannu mangbone tene lama ngusu jungne sungchu nangyongdu zane taje togane tegardun jege yorwa taje tone yang ji sungchu mangbu tanda shude yorwa yang tensongge togu mari sege marda tenso tanda ngusu lama tege sungchu nang jimbare pena ngarangson di kangbanan zomne shudewa nanshin chene taji nyamdu shudewa yindu zane tene ko tensoda ko toya yinde lama ngusu da lame ngusu tegardu songne di ngorudu sosoge tegar kogi yoba yinza da di ko anji chu jubada denba chi chan ruwa da di mayin ba yanji tende ngala pena mekashi samno tende yungure da nga megi lama tende nga tengo mandus kain sana chi nyora chawres da tele pechana changmando nga debdu zo lo nga nyamne chi yo sayan ro tende yongsigiruwa tenaji o ta taje tone tene pechi ta lama pe ngama keda chembo tendegi sungju pe sabo tendendu tanga te nyene nyamne chanan rindu samba tende yongdu zane o ta tendegi yangji boba tang ngaje to ma mewa soya tang kanдар chu de la men mer juba ji gowa yindu zane tendegi jumsana tene tentadan je den songongi jubane jube chu sabore saya te songgyure
And so he doesn't want you to, to mistake what he's saying. He's not saying that, like that there's something wrong with taking the opportunities to receive, teachings and to do these Dharma activities online, especially, right now in the world there are these opportunities available, and especially if you're not able to meet the spiritual teacher in person, then he's not saying that you shouldn't seek out their teachings or a connection with them online. But when it comes to that in-person connection, if there is the opportunity to meet the spiritual teacher in person, to receive empowerments, transmissions, and teachings from them directly in person, then that is also something to really see as an important thing to seek out. If you in taking understanding kind of the value of that in-person, person-to-person connection, that's really how real transmission happens and how then it becomes, Dharma that is endowed with lineage, or there is kind of that lineage connection. But without that, for instance, if later on, there are some who already kind of have the attitude like, oh, I don't have a spiritual teacher, I don't need to rely on a spiritual teacher, I, can just read books and kind of figure out how to practice on my own. And so that is an attitude that some people might have, and that is a faulty attitude. In the same way, if, for instance, somebody has the same thought with regard to receiving teachings and empowerments and so forth online, and they think, oh, I don't really need to meet a teacher in person, I can just, receive what I can through the internet and kind of do it on my own, then there's definitely no real lineage connection there that happens. And so this is to avoid, this kind of warning is to avoid, having kind of an overconfident attitude or or pride that doesn't really value or understand the importance of actually seeking out a qualified spiritual teacher and having that person-to-person relationship or connection.
Dila chebar chik tende yung do penna azunde lalen sodde man ro china ta peche churang chola nyamnyo yijere daji sosoge sungchu chune shyo manyo wa chene lalen sodde ma de ma chi lo wa yina samna chorwa chik tende yung gre yina ya tele la chigi daji lama chigin dene munegi chi nyamnyo yung ke chigin dene jase lalen de man reshe ge ton chig nyene chig shyo yina churang namju dep tingma jathamba loja wale tanda lamegi sungchu chigdegi churang jase lalengi thonda thola tane samlo tang thoyal pe pento shuk chewa yungu yorwa o tindu ti jumsan karsana ngazo ngone ge ji lamegi damga de guye bachi tindu lame damga se ya ta jubane ma jujabegi nyamnyong tere ti ke chembo yimbachi ngazo tene sewo cha yungu do o tindu 다 텐데게 돈에 되는 주반에 주베 주에 sabjing 건설 채와서야 대송발에 대인도 되는 간조 드링게 되는 참디다 되는 사례 두수 창도.
So for instance, take the text of the 37 Bodhisattva practices, which all of you are very familiar with, and these texts are, they're beautiful, they're profound, and they kind of are very moving. So for instance, even without having received any teachings on the 37 Bodhisattva practices, someone could read this and definitely there will be a feeling that arises, in the heart and mind that is moved by those words. However, then if one receives an teaching or instruction, explanation from a qualified teacher, and then the understanding goes so much deeper, and sort of that feeling also goes so much deeper. So the benefit is magnified by what one receives in terms of instruction from the teacher on that particular text. And so then really actually receiving the Lama's pith instructions on it one time is like much more beneficial than reading the text without those instructions 100 times. So it's like 100 times more beneficial. And so then, also there's the experience, there's that experience that is arisen in the mind stream of the teacher, that then, there's that kind of transmission that the students receive, and then that is how, the tradition or lineage is passed on or transferred. And so this is the first of the 6-chapter verse on the vital points of view, meditation, and conduct in the Gong Chig, where he says, any sacred Dharma teachings that are connected with a lineage are profound. And so we can conclude there for today.
Ma je ba na je je ba nyam ba me ba ya ko ne gon de me wa yo.
Am I supposed to do
Please stay a few moments for announcements. Thank you.